The wind sweeping across the northern plains of ancient China carried an unsettling silence, a quiet that seemed to tremble with the anticipation of a looming destiny. The year was 260 BCE, and the Warring States period was reaching its most violent climax. 7 kingdoms clashed relentlessly, each vying for supremacy, but none possessed the cold, unwavering ambition of Qin. Its gaze, as sharp as its iron-forged swords, was fixed intently on Zhao, the last significant obstacle standing between Qin in the West and the total unification of China. Before we dive into the heart of this narrative, I would be grateful if you would consider subscribing to my channel, giving this video a like, sharing your thoughts in the comments, and spreading the word to support my efforts in bringing more compelling stories to you. Your support is invaluable. Thank you. The story of Changping didn't begin with a clash of armies on a battlefield. It began in the hushed tension of royal courts, in the whispered advice of ministers, in the delicate pride of kings, and in the anxious hopes of ordinary people who sensed the coming storm. Zhao was cornered, not yet defeated, but strained like a bowstring drawn too tight for too long. Their soldiers, seasoned veterans of countless skirmishes, were weary, exhaustion settling deep in their bones. Their farmlands were depleted, and their morale flickered like a candle in the wind. Qin, in stark contrast, pulsed with cold, calculated order and unwavering resolve. King Zhaoxiang's was iron, and under his command, Chancellor Fan Zhu meticulously guided military and political strategies, always with a long-term vision of the future. For Qin's leaders, Changping was not just another battle. It was a carefully calculated step toward reshaping the entire map of China. But no war is ever decided solely by the counsels of the powerful. The lives of tens of thousands of individuals would soon converge in the dusty gorge of Changping, each man carrying his own hopes, fears, loyalties, and unspoken thoughts. Before steel clashed against shields and before the fields ran red with blood, the two states engaged in a preliminary dance of strategy. Zhao initially placed General Lian in command, an older, seasoned commander whose instincts favored defense. He understood the danger Qin posed, recognizing that a reckless advance could shatter Zhao's remaining strength. Thus, he ordered the construction of trenches, fortified his camps, and prepared for a protracted war of attrition. His approach was methodical, cautious, and patient, perhaps too patient for the more impetuous members of Zhao's ruling elite. Qin, recognizing the stalemate, employed tactics at which it excelled: espionage, misinformation, and psychological warfare. Rumors began to circulate within the Zhao court, whispers suggesting that Lian had grown timid and no longer possessed the daring spirit of a great commander. These rumors were not accidental. Qin agents had carefully planted them, allowing suspicion to take root in the mind of Zhao's young king. And so, in a decision that would resonate through the centuries, Zhao replaced the experienced Lian Pu with a much younger general, Zhao Qua. Zhao Qua's reputation was promising. His theories of warfare were elegant, his words full of confidence. However, he had never actually commanded troops in a real battle. He had studied war as if it were a flawless geometric exercise, only to discover, too late, that geometry collapses when confronted with the realities of human fear, hunger, and chaos. The soldiers murmured uneasily at the change in command. Some supported the youthful general, admiring his self-assuredness. Others stared into the distance at night, wondering why their king had dismissed a man who had protected them for months. The frontline officers sensed something even more troubling, that Zhao's decision had been driven by pride rather than necessity. When Zhao Ku assumed command, the atmosphere around Changping palpably shifted. The Qin General Bai Qi, a commander with a reputation for chilling ruthlessness, observed the transition with calm, predatory patience. Bai Qi was no ordinary leader. His name alone was enough to make seasoned warriors stiffen. He possessed a keen understanding of the human heart, the importance of timing, and the brutal effectiveness of luring an enemy into their own destruction. Zhao Ku's first days in command were marked by fiery proclamations. He spoke of honor, decisive victory, and the urgent need to break Qin's stranglehold by seizing the initiative. His soldiers listened, inspired yet uneasy. Many of them were already worn down by months of siege-like conditions. Supplies were dwindling and morale was fragile. But Zhao Ku believed that decisive action would restore morale, and so he prepared to launch an attack. Meanwhile, Bai Qi waited. He refused to fully engage, instead orchestrating small feints, each one designed to convince Zhao Kuo that the Qin forces were hesitant or off balance. Zhao Kuo interpreted these signs as proof that Qin feared his boldness. In truth, Bai Qi was manipulating him like a puppet on invisible strings. In the Qin capital, ministers watched with cold satisfaction. Fan Zhu, the chancellor whose eyes seemed perpetually half-closed in contemplation, had long warned that Zhao's arrogance could be exploited. Now, as he watched Zhao take the bait, he simply nodded at the inevitability of what was to come. As the days stretched on, the terrain of Changping became a character in its own right. Dry ridges and narrow passes created natural traps. The land seemed to hold its breath, like a vessel waiting to be shattered. Soldiers from both sides built fires at night, dotting the landscape like restless stars. The smells of boiled grain, sweat, and damp leather drifted through the darkness. Men told stories to calm their nerves. Stories of families waiting back home, of past battles, and of ominous signs they dared not interpret. Zhao studied his maps with growing impatience. His chance to leave a mark on history seemed to beckon from just beyond the horizon. And so, after consulting with officers who dared not contradict him, he gave the order to advance. It was a decision that would ultimately shape the destiny of both kingdoms. The Zhao army began to move, full of confidence and determination, unaware that Bai Qi had already prepared the earth itself to swallow them whole. Qin scouts observed every step, every formation, every shift in Zhao's lines. And as Zhao marched closer to the heart of Qin's hidden plan, Bai Qi quietly sealed the exits behind them. The tension in Changping tightened like a noose, slowly, silently, inevitably, and thus began the opening act of one of the most devastating battles in ancient history. The morning air carried a faint chill as the Zhao army pressed deeper into the narrow valleys of Changping. The soldiers marched in tight formation, their armor clanking, banners snapping in the wind. Zhao rode at the front, brimming with confidence in his plans and convinced that boldness and aggression would secure victory. He envisioned the glory of leading Zhao to triumph and etching his name into the annals of history. But Qin had laid a trap, carefully disguised as opportunity. Bai Qi's forces feigned a retreat, luring Zhao further forward, drawing them into positions where every advantage would favor the Qin army. The terrain narrowed. Steep hills rose sharply on either side, creating perfect conditions for ambushes. Driven by their new general's energy, the Zhao troops pushed onward, oblivious of the fact that each step brought them closer to disaster. As the day unfolded, a series of small skirmishes tested both sides. Zhao units were drawn into minor engagements with Qin scouts, yet each confrontation seemed to benefit Qin, providing them with valuable intelligence about the Zhao army's movements. Zhao Kuo, interpreting these skirmishes as signs of weakness in the enemy, urged his forces to advance even more aggressively. His soldiers, inspired by his youthful confidence but lacking experience in this kind of strategic deception, complied. Hidden behind the ridges, Bai Qi observed with calm, calculating eyes. He understood the human mind and its susceptibility to pride and impatience. He meticulously noted every decision Zhao Kuo made, every formation shift, and every misstep, calculating the precise moment to strike. Slowly, he began encircling the Zhao army, ensuring that escape routes would soon vanish completely. By the second day, tension among the Zhao soldiers had noticeably increased. Food supplies were running low. The march was exhausting, and rumors of Qin's strength, spreading throughout the valleys, only added to the growing unease. Nevertheless, morale remained somewhat tied to the presence of their general, whose confidence still seemed boundless. Zhao spoke of honor, of vengeance for Zhao's beleaguered lands, and the need to seize the initiative. Soldiers listened, their hearts stirred by his words, although shadows of doubt lingered beneath the surface. At dusk, the Zhao army reached the narrowest passes of the valley. Bai Qi initiated the next phase of his plan. He blocked potential retreat paths with hidden forces, effectively creating an invisible net. Small skirmishes flared into a series of controlled confrontations. Zhao Kuo, misinterpreting each movement as a sign of weakness in the enemy, pressed harder. The Zhao army's advance became a funnel, moving straight into Bai Qi's prepared lines. Night fell, and both armies settled into a state of tense vigilance. Fires dotted the hillsides, their smoke curling into the dark sky. Soldiers whispered to one another, sharing stories to mask their fear. Zhao studied his maps by firelight, adjusting his plans with growing urgency, unaware that Bai Qi had anticipated each and every adjustment. For every maneuver he thought was secret, the Qin commander had already foreseen it. On the third day, Zhao troops finally encountered the full strength of Bai Qi's hidden army. Seemingly rising from the earth itself, the walls of soldiers blocked their path. Zhao ordered a full engagement, confident that his numerical superiority would overwhelm the Qin positions. However, Bai Qi's carefully planned encirclement left them trapped in a deadly maze. Every attack met reinforced lines, and every potential retreat was cut off. The realization began to dawn on the Zhao generals. The ground beneath them was a meticulously designed trap. From that moment forward, the battle escalated with tragic inevitability. Zhao soldiers fought valiantly, their courage unwavering despite the mounting casualties. Yet, every attempt to break the encirclement faltered. Bai Qi moved with unwavering precision, reinforcing weak points and exploiting the exhaustion of the Zhao forces. Zhao's initial confidence slowly curdled into desperation, as each strategy he employed only tightened the Qin's grip. Throughout the night, cries and the clanging of metal echoed across the valley. The firelight revealed the grim reality. Thousands of Zhao soldiers lay wounded, unable to move, while others continued to fight with unwavering determination. Leaders attempted to rally their troops, but fatigue and fear had sown widespread confusion. Bai Qi, ever patient, observed and waited, knowing that the endgame was fast approaching. By the fourth day, Zhao troops were physically and mentally exhausted. Food and water supplies had dwindled to dangerously low levels. Morale cracked under the relentless pressure, and the psychological weight of being trapped became almost unbearable. Zhao, facing mounting losses, attempted a series of daring maneuvers, desperately hoping to find a way out. Each attempt failed. Bai Qi's lines held firm, and the net of Qin soldiers tightened inexorably. The Zhao army, now fully aware of the magnitude of their predicament, faced a harrowing decision: continue their futile assaults or surrender to certain capture. But surrender was unthinkable to many, bound as they were by honor, pride, and the fear of shame. The night before the final confrontation, soldiers huddled together in small groups, whispering last messages to their families, recalling the paths that had led them to this point, and silently contemplating their impending fate. And so, the stage was set for a cataclysm. Bai Qi, having carefully studied the weaknesses and pride of Zhao, now prepared for the decisive moment. He had skillfully allowed Zhao's ambition to draw his army into the perfect position for destruction. The valley of Changping, silent and indifferent, awaited the clash that would change the fate of nations. In the shadow of the mountains, soldiers on both sides faced an unspoken truth. Bravery alone could not alter the course set by cunning and meticulous preparation. The coming hours would test the limits of human endurance, willpower, and the deadly precision of a master strategist. As dawn approached, both armies braced themselves for what history would remember as one of the bloodiest and most decisive engagements of the warring states period. As the fifth day dawned, the valley of Changping became a stage for both desperate acts and calculated strategy. Zhao soldiers, weary and hungry, faced an enemy they could scarcely see, yet whose influence permeated every step, every formation, every breath. Bai Qi, fully aware of the psychological toll, had prepared not only the terrain, but also the perfect morale trap. He masterfully allowed the Zhao army's impatience and overconfidence to continue drawing them deeper into the carefully crafted encirclement. Although increasingly aware of the looming danger, Zhao could still place his faith in the valor of his men. He moved among the troops, offering encouragement, reminding them of Zhao's glorious history and the honor that awaited them in victory. Nevertheless, cracks were beginning to appear. Units hesitated when given orders, and small quarrels erupted among the exhausted soldiers. Whispers of fear spread through the ranks like smoke. The general's charisma, which had once been a powerful source of inspiration, could only do so much against the overwhelming weight of exhaustion, hunger, and mounting casualties. Meanwhile, the Qin forces operated with the precision of a finely tuned machine. Bai Qi had strategically positioned reserves to flank unseen positions, effectively trapping any unit that attempted to retreat or reposition. Small ambushes inflicted steady losses, further eroding the Zhao army's already fragile morale. Every charge launched by the Zhao soldiers was met with an unwavering wall of discipline and expertly executed counterattacks that funneled them into increasingly confined spaces. It was as if the very mountains themselves conspired to crush them. Zhao attempted several tactical adjustments, hoping to break the encirclement or lure out portions of the enemy force. However, each maneuver was anticipated by Bai Qi. His highly effective intelligence network provided constant updates, ensuring that even the slightest change in formation was immediately countered. The battlefield had become a chessboard, with thousands of lives hanging in the balance, each move carefully calculated, each response measured to perfection. By nightfall, the psychological strain on the Zhao forces had reached a breaking point. Soldiers huddled together in fear, whispering reassurances to one another, while their leaders desperately tried to maintain discipline and order. The night was punctuated by the distant cries of wounded comrades, the occasional clash as small units fought desperately, and the omnipresent tension of knowing that the net of Qin forces had almost completely closed. Seeing the futility of launching frontal assaults, Zhao began to consider alternative strategies. However, his options were limited, and the window of opportunity was rapidly closing. On the sixth day, a decisive moment arrived. Bai Qi unleashed a coordinated assault from previously hidden flanks. The Zhao soldiers, already pushed to their limits, now faced attacks from multiple directions. Many of them realized for the first time the full extent of their peril. Zhao's units tried valiantly to respond, but the encirclement prevented any effective counterattacks. Panic began to spread through the ranks like wildfire. Commanders shouted orders that went unheeded as fear and confusion overwhelmed discipline. Zhao himself fought bravely, personally leading charges and attempting to inspire his troops. However, the pressure was simply too immense. The army that had marched with such confidence into Changping now staggered, pressed from all sides. Bai Qi's men struck with relentless precision, cutting off escape routes and utilizing the terrain to maximum advantage. The mountains themselves funneled the Zhao soldiers into carefully planned killing zones, where every charge and every step resulted in predictable and devastating losses. By nightfall, thousands lay wounded or dead, and the remaining soldiers were trapped in a near impossible situation. Zhao finally realized the inevitability of catastrophe. He convened his generals, urging them to launch one final, coordinated push in the hope of carving out a corridor for escape. Despite their unwavering determination, the Zhao units were unable to break through the Qin lines. Exhaustion, hunger, and the relentless assault had eroded any chance of success. Observing from his vantage point, Bai Qi allowed this final display of resistance to play out, understanding that once the Zhao army fully committed to such desperate measures, his trap would be complete. The Qin forces, disciplined and organized, held their positions and tightened the net. Every step taken by the Zhao army played directly into the Qin strategy, ensuring that chaos and attrition would do most of the work before the final blow was struck. As dawn broke on the seventh day, the Zhao forces faced a grim reality. Encircled, exhausted, and completely outmaneuvered, their fate was sealed. Bai Qi began the final phase of his plan, coordinating attacks from every angle to ensure maximum effect. The battle was no longer about maneuver or strategy. It had become a test of endurance, courage, and human will in the face of overwhelming odds. Zhao's leadership was undeniably heroic, but the careful preparation, patience, and cold calculation of Bai Qi proved to be far superior. By nightfall, the Zhao army had suffered catastrophic casualties, and those who remained were forced to either surrender or face certain annihilation. The valley of Changping, scarred and silent, would forever be remembered as the site of one of the most devastating and decisive battles of the Warring States period. Bai Qi's victory was complete, but it was not merely a triumph of brute strength. Rather, it was a powerful testament to the importance of strategy, patience, and a clear understanding of the brutal realities of warfare. History would remember it as a masterclass in tactical execution and psychological dominance, where one general's foresight and unwavering discipline overcame even the most valiant efforts of the enemy. The eighth day of the Battle of Changping brought a haunting stillness to the valley, a brief respite before the storm of carnage resumed. The Zhao soldiers, pushed to the very limits of their physical and mental endurance, now confronted the grim reality that their pride and valor were simply no match for the meticulous strategy of Bai Qi. Supplies were almost entirely depleted. The hillsides were littered with bodies, and morale teetered precariously on the brink of complete collapse. Zhao understood that his army could no longer sustain frontal assaults. Innovative and desperate tactics were essential if any hope of survival remained. Bai Qi, in stark contrast, moved with unwavering confidence. He had meticulously recorded every moment of Zhao hesitation and fatigue, preparing to implement the final stage of his master plan. The systematic encirclement and isolation of the remaining Zhao units, cutting off any and all avenues of retreat and forcing confrontation on terms that were entirely favorable to Qin. The mountains, rivers, and narrow passes became integral tools in his masterful orchestration, transforming the natural landscape into a seamless extension of his formidable army. In a desperate attempt to salvage the situation, Zhao ordered his forces to divide into smaller, more mobile units, hoping that some might manage to slip past the Qin lines. However, Bai Qi had anticipated just such a move and was fully prepared to counter it. Hidden reserves moved silently into position, intercepting each detachment before it could escape the tightening net. Devastating ambushes struck from the ridges, valleys, and flanking positions, leaving the Zhao soldiers with absolutely no refuge. Each failure only served to compound the existing exhaustion and despair, further eroding the cohesion that had once defined their army. By midday, the relentless psychological strain began to manifest in visible panic among the Zhao ranks. Soldiers hesitated to obey orders. Some even refused them outright, while others attempted to flee, only to be cut down immediately. Zhao's confidence wavered, but he continued to lead personally, rallying his troops amidst the growing chaos. Despite their unwavering courage and loyalty, the Zhao army could not regain control of the battlefield. Bai Qi's strategy, grounded in patience and precise calculation, maintained its complete dominance. The Qin forces continued to apply relentless pressure with disciplined rotations, bringing fresh units into the fray, while the exhausted Zhao soldiers were consistently forced into increasingly disadvantageous positions. The meticulous use of terrain was particularly notable. Narrow passages forced the units to fight in confined and vulnerable spaces. The hills were expertly used for ambushes, and the rivers effectively prevented any possibility of retreat. It became increasingly evident that individual bravery, while certainly admirable, could not counteract the combined effect of superior strategy, expertly planned terrain control, and calculated psychological manipulation. As evening approached, the final, coordinated attacks began. Bai Qi launched multiple simultaneous strikes, specifically targeting weak points and pressing the exhausted Zhao units from all sides. Zhao ordered desperate counterattacks, but his army was now fragmented and unable to respond effectively. Every action taken by the Zhao troops seemed to have been anticipated, every formation countered, every maneuver expertly trapped. The valley rang with a cacophony of clashing steel, the desperate cries of the wounded, and the increasingly frantic shouts of commanders attempting to restore some semblance of order amidst the escalating chaos. By the 9th day, the vast majority of the Zhao army had been either trapped or annihilated. Zhao could finally face the stark inevitability of complete defeat. He attempted one last desperate strategy, a concentrated strike at the enemy's flank, hoping to create a narrow corridor that would allow his remaining troops to retreat to safety. But Bai Qi's positioning was flawless. Even this final, heroic effort was decisively neutralized, leaving the remnants of the Zhao soldiers completely encircled and utterly demoralized. The culmination of exhaustion, hunger, and relentless pressure had sealed their grim fate. Throughout the entire battle, Bai Qi's unwavering discipline, remarkable foresight, and skillful manipulation of both the physical and psychological elements of warfare became strikingly evident. Every action taken by the Zhao forces played directly into his carefully crafted plans, and every misstep was expertly exploited to maximum effect. His strategy exemplified the brutal precision that was possible in the art of war, where human endurance, effective leadership, and individual courage were relentlessly tested against calculated manipulation and unwavering patience. The Valley of Changping itself seemed to be complicit in the unfolding massacre, effectively funneling human ambition towards utter disaster. As nightfall descended, the encirclement was complete. The Zhao soldiers, now fully aware of the futility of their situation, faced a harrowing choice: surrender to the enemy or embrace certain annihilation. The landscape, marred by countless casualties, bore silent witness to the unparalleled skill and cold ruthlessness of Bai Qi's overall strategy. Every element of the battlefield, the strategic use of terrain, the precise positioning of troops, the impeccable timing of attacks, was a clear reflection of a commander who possessed not only a deep understanding of the practical tactics of combat, but also an acute awareness of the subtle nuances of human psychology under extreme stress. The aftermath was both predictable and inevitable. Zhao's valiant attempt at survival had ultimately failed against the relentless precision and strategic brilliance of their adversary. Bai Qi had effectively removed an entire army from the war, achieving this not through sheer brute force alone, but through a masterful combination of superior strategy, unwavering patience, and the skillful manipulation of every available advantage. The Battle of Changping stood as a stark and sobering lesson in the critical importance of discipline, meticulous preparation, and a deep understanding of both the terrain and the often unpredictable nature of the human spirit in the unforgiving context of warfare. It became a pivotal moment in the Warring States period, definitively marking the rise of Qin as the dominant power in the region. The 10th day of the Battle of Changping marked the tragic culmination of one of the most harrowing and decisive campaigns in the long and turbulent history of the Warring States period. Zhao's once formidable forces, now utterly battered and broken, could barely muster any significant resistance against the relentless precision and overwhelming power of Bai Qi's seemingly unstoppable army. The carefully planned and meticulously executed encirclement had been perfected, leaving the remaining Zhao soldiers with absolutely no path of retreat, no opportunity to regroup or reorganize, and virtually no hope of survival. The valley, scarred and transformed by days of intense combat, bore the unmistakable marks of human endurance pushed to its absolute limits. Zhao Kuo, standing defiantly amidst the scattered remnants of his once proud army, finally recognized the grim inevitability of total defeat. He moved with solemn purpose among the surviving units, attempting to maintain some semblance of order and offer a measure of comfort to his beleaguered men. But the stark reality of their exhaustion, their growing starvation, and the relentlessly mounting casualties was simply undeniable. Every glance around him revealed the full and terrible toll of the relentless conflict. Soldiers slumped over their weapons in utter exhaustion, close companions lying dead on the blood-soaked ground, and the pervasive sense that their morale had been eroded beyond any possibility of repair. The general's own resolve was being severely tested. His leadership stretched to its absolute limit as he desperately sought even the faintest glimmer of hope in the gathering darkness. Bai Qi, observing the unfolding scene from his strategically chosen vantage points, prepared to bring the final, devastating phase of his masterful plan to its brutal conclusion. His forces, meticulously disciplined and flawlessly coordinated, executed a series of calculated assaults that were designed not merely to defeat, but to completely annihilate the remaining Zhao forces. Every desperate attempt by the Zhao soldiers to break free from the tightening encirclement was met and countered immediately. Every last-ditch move was absorbed into the larger, overarching Qin strategy. It was a clear and unmistakable demonstration of complete mastery over both the physical and the psychological dimensions of warfare. The sheer strength of Zhao's remaining army could not possibly overcome Bai Qi's almost supernatural anticipation, his unwavering patience, and his unparalleled tactical brilliance. The final hours of the battle were marked by almost unbearable levels of desperation. The Zhao units, now completely fragmented and utterly disoriented, launched valiant but ultimately futile charges against heavily fortified Qin positions. Zhao commanders shouted orders into the growing chaos, desperately attempting to rally their men for one last stand. But the unyielding encirclement left absolutely no room for effective maneuver. Each valley and each narrow ridge had become a carefully baited trap, and each river crossing represented a potential and very likely death trap. Bai Qi's calculated control over the terrain and the precise deployment of his troops had effectively transformed the entire battlefield into a relentless instrument of attrition. By midday, the Zhao army had been effectively neutralized. Thousands lay dead or wounded, and those who remained faced only two grim alternatives: surrender to the enemy or face inevitable destruction. Zhao made one final, desperate attempt to negotiate surrender terms, hoping against hope to spare the lives of at least some of his remaining men. But Bai Qi, steadfast and resolute in his unwavering purpose, insisted upon nothing less than total and unconditional submission. The Zhao army, once a formidable force feared throughout the region, had been completely broken, shattered by a combination of superior strategy, unrelenting discipline, and masterful foresight. The human cost was staggering, a terrible testament to the brutal and unforgiving nature of warfare and the cold, dispassionate calculations of a true master tactician. The valley of Changping, once vibrant with the movement of armies and the hopes and fears of countless soldiers, now stood silent and grim, a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of strategic miscalculation, overextension, and the grave error of underestimating a cunning and ruthless opponent. Bai Qi's overwhelming victory decisively solidified the Qin state's dominance, fundamentally altering the balance of power in the volatile and ever-shifting landscape of the warring states period. His strategic brilliance was studied for generations to come, not merely for its tactical innovation, but for its profound understanding of human psychology in the context of brutal combat. In the days that followed, Bai Qi ensured that the battlefield was methodically secured, remaining supplies were carefully managed, and surviving prisoners were accounted for. The sheer scale of the loss of life was so vast and so devastating that the psychological impact on neighboring states was both immediate and profound. News of the annihilation at Changping spread rapidly, instilling. The battle inspired both fear and profound respect. It was a stark demonstration of how strategic patience, careful planning, and ruthlessly efficient execution could achieve results that far outweighed mere numerical superiority on the battlefield. Even Zhao, reflecting upon his devastating defeat, was forced to acknowledge the superior skill and foresight of his adversary, Bai Qi. Though undeniably tragic, the Battle of Changping underscored both the extraordinary valor of the Zhao soldiers and the chilling effectiveness of Bai Qi's command. The lessons of Changping were indelibly etched into collective memory of the warring states. It revealed that thorough preparation, accurate intelligence gathering, skillful utilization of terrain, and a deep understanding of psychological warfare could ultimately triumph over even the most unwavering courage. The Battle of Changping will forever be remembered not only for its immense scale of devastation and loss of life, but also as a showcase of unparalleled tactical genius. In the final analysis, the story of Changping is more than just a simple recounting of victory and defeat. It represents a profound exploration of leadership, strategic thinking, and the limits of human endurance under unimaginable pressure. Bai Qi's triumph definitively demonstrated how meticulous planning, unwavering patience, and a complete mastery of both the physical and psychological dimensions of warfare could enable one to overcome even the most resilient and determined opposition. For the state of Zhao, the battle became a defining tragedy, a wound that would take generations to heal. For Qin, it represented a decisive step towards eventual unification and absolute dominance over all China. History would immortalize Changping as a grim but invaluable lesson in the art of warfare, a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked human ambition, and a testament to the delicate and often precarious balance between raw courage and strategic brilliance.